Welcome to episode 165 of the Necronama.com. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast, you should check out the show notes from this episode. You can get up to 2 months of free hosting from Libsyn. You'll have access to critical stats, helping you launch your podcast, grow your audience, and bring your podcast to life. Go check out the show notes for the Libsyn promo code and start podcasting today. Now in their 18th year, Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003, offering a wide range of products for your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics. Officially licensed collections include titles like John Carpenter's The Thing, The Evil Dead, Creepshow, Jaws, the Halloween franchise, and so many more. Head on over to fright-rags.com. Make sure to sign up for their SMS and email newsletter to never miss a drop. Listeners get 10% off when they use the code NECRO10, all caps, at checkout. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and sometimes I go by the name of Otis.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast, and sometimes I go by the name Bofa. Really, I go by Mike Honcho every now and then.
My goodness. So joining us today, Paul Michael Anderson is back. Welcome back to the show, man.
It is my hat trick appearance.
You don't get a jacket. You don't get anything special though.
I don't even get like a little sticker or a certificate or something.
We would give out gifts, but Thomas Brungart has done the show more times than anybody, and we don't like giving him stuff. So everybody else has to suffer so that he doesn't get anything.
Okay, then I now have to be on the show more than him, so I can.
Oh my God! Oh boy, that could be impossible. But anyway, so let's start out. Why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself in case they haven't listened to your other amazing episodes?
I am the author of the books, the collections, Bones Are Made to Be Broken. And in September of 2022, my second collection will be called Everything Will Be All Right in the End, Apocalypse Songs. Also the author of the novella Standalone and co-author of the novella How We Broke with Bracken McLeod. I'm also a credit to my race, handsome and charming. And if you listen to the Silent Night, Deadly Night episode, I love Christmas and sarcasm. So, hi.
Excellent. Well, sweet. So let's go to the normal question here. Why did you choose Frailty, even though you chose it in like last August and may not remember anymore?
Frailty is one of those movies that if you do a deep dive in horror and you love the genre and all its ramifications, it was funny. And this is going to be a tangent to a main point.
Sweet.
I know, right? I was talking with my mother, who, she was a single mom. I grew up in tiny apartments, and up until about the age of 12, I was terrified of literally everything. But because my mother grew up watching horror movies and loving horror movies, I just they were always around. Not like she sat me down saying, "Okay, we're watching the Dream Warriors now. Deal with it." It was just kind of always on. So horror was always a part of the life, but I never liked it until I was about 12. But I was talking with her maybe 6-7 months ago, and we were talking about definitions of horror and what makes a good horror movie. And and it's funny, I never knew this, she does not like any horror that isn't like hauntings. Like, she loves ghost stories. That's literally the horror she likes. And that's kind of it. Everything else is like, she calls slasher movies slice and dice, very derogatorily. And I'm like, I wrote a pretty well-known slasher at this point. She's like, I know. I like the story at the end of the book, though. And I was like, and I was thinking about it in Frailty. To get back to the main point, it's one of those movies that no one really, the mainstream audience, this is Frailty is the movie you check if you're an indie fuck. Like, I like Frailty, but it's legitimately just a good movie. It's not like, I like those indie music fans who are like, what? Your band has a label? I saw my band on a street corner. I am more indie and hip than you. That's kind of bullshit you see in college. But Frailty is one of those movies that kind of gets lumped in because no one's seen it. Mm-hmm. And it really honestly should be seen by as many people as possible, not just because it's a great performance by Matthew McConaughey, his most subdued, at least at the time period it was made. And not just because of discount Michael Ironsides, i.e. Powers Booth. But it's also just a really good story about, loyalty, responsibility, the kind of gray area morality of right or wrong. It's the ambiguity of it up until the very, very end of the movie, mm-hmm. where they kind of have to show their hand. There's so much going for it that it's one of those movies, and I would lump it in with movies like Behind the Mask, which was the reason why I was on the show for the first time. It's one of those movies that like everyone should be aware of. It should be a bigger name than it is. So when you and I talk about like, what movies? And I'm like, Frailty, because no one fucking knows what it is except for like 10 horror fans.
It's one of my favorite horror movies ever. And I don't think I'm an indie fuck, but maybe I am. But the first time that I was told to watch it, I was like, that sounds like everything I hate in one place.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to watch that. But
like what?
It's just the religious aspects and all that stuff. I was even more against that at that point in my life, because that was like a major turning point for me. But the girl who wanted me to watch it was really hot, so I did. And I've been watching it ever since, and she's long gone. So, but no, this movie is now one of those films that I just absolutely adore. And when people make the mistake of telling me they've seen it, they get stuck in like a 15-minute conversation about it. So I love it. What about you, Don? Had you seen this before?
I saw it a long time ago, probably not too far after it came out, because my claim to fame at the time was I actually had a DVD player before a lot of other people I knew. So, I think one of my girlfriends at the time rented it, and it was the same thing with Fallen. I saw them both around the same time. I mean, Fallen comes out a couple of years after this, but saw them around the same time.
Oh, Fallen's a good one.
And yeah, no, I take that back. I think they came out around the same time, but I remember watching it, and I've not watched either one of them since it came out. And as I'm watching this film, I'm like, oh, I bet this is going to happen. You know what? I think this is. And I started watching. I was like, holy shit, you remembered everything that happened in the movie. Yes, you did see it. You just don't remember seeing it. Like all the twists and things like that. I'm like, son of a bitch. Because the only thing I could remember was Matthew McConaughey was the killer. And so when I first see him, I'm like, I'm thrown off. But yeah,
I guess should we do spoilers at this? Do we I can't remember how we do with spoilers.
All we ever do is spoilers. So,
I know. I can remember. I'm like, oh shit, that's the twist at the end.
Well, no, there's like 3 twists though. So
the twist is that we did it at the beginning. Ha ha. Yes.
Oh. It's like Kevin Spacey in American Beauty. He was dead the whole time.
This is the reverse M. Night Shyamalan.
Right.
We don't build up to it. We just spoil it right away.
Yeah.
But yeah. So no, that's great.
Yeah. It comes because you mentioned you saw it a long time ago. I know I saw it a long time ago, and we were talking before the show began. It came out in 2001. I know it was filmed in 2000 because I remember one of the criticisms. Because I'm one of those people. I don't know if you guys are, but by the fact that you have this podcast, you probably are. That you have to you see a movie and you immediately hit to the IMDb trivia page.
Yeah, I do that.
And you want to learn all the
yeah.
we have to own it. We have to own it. But I read that there was a lot of criticism at the time because when the film opens, like the FBI office in Dallas is almost empty, and it came out post 9/11. Right. But Bill Paxton, who directed it, was like, but it was filmed in 2000, and there wasn't that many. Plus, as he argued, he's like, on top of that, it's like it doesn't really. If you have a bunch of people making a lot of noise in the background, it kind of kills the mood. You can't get smooth. When there are people watching. So it was it's a weird time capsule because it's a movie that has, if you wanted to look at it from a political lens, you really could, especially in today's era. But it wasn't made from a political standpoint. Like I always found it interesting because Bill Paxton, I think this was his first feature film. I think he just wanted to make a horror movie, which the joke of our genre, especially when it comes to film, is that this is either where your career goes to die or it's where you hope you'll get a jump start, but you probably won't, because who fucking remembers the main characters from from Prowler, for example. So maybe if you're lucky, you'll become a meme at some point. Garbage day. So yeah, I always found it really, I have to do callbacks to my other episodes. I always found it really interesting that this was his first feature film, and it was filmed in a time prior to the insanity that has been the 21st century for the past 22 years. So it's almost like encased in lucite, and you can almost look at it just as a film, and it's kind of interesting to do. Because I remember seeing it a few years after it came out, like you, Don. I think I caught it in college, and if I recall correctly, it was because I simply did not have cable in my apartment, and I hate silence, and I can only listen to the same 25 CDs that I had at the time because I was a broke college student and poor ass writer. So I would go to Walmart and $5 DVD bin and just pick up so much shit. I think I still have some of those movies too. It was just one of those movies I happened to see. I'm like, oh, this is really good. This is really good. Why have I not heard this?
It's heavily underrated. Like I don't know of anybody who's seen it that did not like it. And even to the point where, you might not have somebody who says, oh, this is the greatest movie of all time, but you at least have people who have kind of the same reaction to this movie. And I mentioned American Beauty, but the same reaction they have to something like American Beauty or just a movie that's not polarizing at all. It's kind of like, I saw it, I liked it. I may watch it again one day, but it's not my favorite, but it's not something that, I absolutely detest. If it's on, I'm going to watch it. Or if there's somebody I know who hasn't seen it, I'm going to convince them to watch it because I want to see if they get the twist. I want to see if they get the other twist that comes up and, exactly what's going to be going through their head. And the one person I do that with is my mom. If I know she hasn't seen a certain movie, I'm like, oh, let me put it on. And then oh
shit. Has your mom seen this?
No, I wish she had stayed longer. Oh my God. I wish if she does, longer.
I need you to video some of her reactions because they would be amazing.
I'm telling you, dude, like next time, because we're got a family get together planned. I'm just gonna live stream it. I'm just gonna put it on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or wherever. And I'm just gonna let her go with the whole, he's probably the killer. Oh, I don't trust that motherfucker. It's like the greatest. It's like there's going to be the day that comes when she's not going to be around anymore. I'm going to be like, fuck, I would love for her to sit down and watch this movie.
It's funny. I do the same thing with my mom, but not because she has hilarious reactions, just because I'm like, all right, as I said earlier, she just has this very narrow definition of horror. And so I'll sit her down and be like, okay, no, you have to watch this. I don't like, because she kind of looks at me like, do you like this movie or do you like this movie ironically? Like when I watch Christmas Evil. Right. Or some shit. So like, I'll be like, no, you need to borrow this. Like I did that with The Innkeepers. I was like, it's ghosts. You'll like it. Shut the fuck up and watch it. I think I did it with Frailty, but I think she just didn't watch it. And I'm like, can I emancipate myself at the age of 38? But it's funny you bring that up. It's like, it's not a movie that changes your life or anything like that, but it's also not a movie that doesn't just pass through you, where you eat those movies you just kind of ingest and then you forget about it in 2 weeks. It isn't one of those. But conversely, if you are a fan of it, and I can't speak, like James, you said this is like one of your favorite horror movies of all time. Like for me, I have to be in a certain mood to watch it. So there will be long periods where I'll pull it off the shelf, be like, I should watch this. And then 2 hours later, I'm actually ready to watch something. I'm like, yeah, I'm not really in the mood to watch that. I want to watch some crappy Fulci movie on Tubi, So it's when I get into it, I'll be like, yeah, I'm fucking locked in. But I'm like that with a few movies.
I think that the reason that I love this so much is actually all Bill Paxton.
Yes.
And I was reading when they gave him the script, he was the one who was like, let me direct this, let me do this. And he was the one who just like pushed and pushed to like give it that old school vibe instead of the overly campy things that were kind of happening at the time.
Yeah.
And he kept pushing like, this has to be really real for it to work. And it has to be, you have to question it. You have to roll with what's happening. And I think those choices are why I like it. I think you could have a very similar script and it would be really easy to lose me. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things I read was that actually, I believe it was James Cameron, they were going to show the visions right away as they happened. And Cameron, again, I think it was Cameron, was like,
I remember reading the same thing.
He was like, no, you got to save that for the end. And I think that in itself would have also thrown me off of this. Like,
yes,
the joy of this, even when you know the twist, even when you know what's happening, the joy of this is not seeing it. It's seeing everything through supposedly Fenton's eyes and not believing either.
Yes.
And it's those choices between Paxton and Cameron that make this film for me. And it's just crazy to me how easily any of those little spots could have gone wrong, and I wouldn't love it nearly as much.
I think it's also one of those movies that plays with genre in terms of mixing it up. Like around that same time period, you had movies like Identity and Stir of Echoes, that same era. And you could, yes, they're horror films, but you could almost say Frailty is a family drama. You can almost say Identity is more of a crime noir movie.
Oh, yeah.
You can almost say Stir of Echoes is a straight mystery with horror overtones. And you don't see that too often without being played with a really heavy hand. Unfortunately, a lot of genre movies that play with different genres in themselves, they tend to do it with a heavy hand of almost like, hey, look how clever I'm being. Whereas this movie is just like, no, this is a horrific thing happening through the eyes of a member of the family it's happening to.
Right.
So it's very grounded. But you mentioned Bill Paxton, and I was like, I don't think I really appreciate Bill Paxton's work, because to me, he was always the game over, man. Until I saw this, and he's just fucking knocking him out. Every scene he's in, he's being a dad. He's being a dad driven, potentially insane, depending on one viewpoint, or being afflicted with this heavenly curse. But he is being first and foremost a dad. And again, that also grounds it.
Yes, it's that's one of the biggest lines for me, because even when he's locking his son in a cellar, he seems to be doing it out of true love and truly trying to help him, and which makes it so much more terrifying.
And it's truly hurting him to do so. You can see the pain on his face when he's like hammering the nails home of the trap door.
God, I love that scene.
Oh, yeah. I wrote down the line from like when he opens it up. Has God spoken to you yet? There is no God. I love that. Oh, God, that exchange. And that kid. The kid who played Fenton fucking nailed. Like, he did so much. Okay. This is going to be a weird comparison. I knew Michael Caine was a good actor because of fucking Muppet Christmas Carol. Nice. And there's a scene where the present day, the ghost of Christmas Present takes him to see his nephew's thing. And they're playing the game where guess the creature, and the creature is Scrooge, but it's all been subjective negative things. And the camera cuts to Michael Caine's face, and you see this torrent of emotions, understated, but like you feel like he's actually feeling pain at that moment. And the actor who played Fenton did the same thing throughout this entire movie. Like I was watching it, and I remember being impressed with the child actor, because the kid that plays Adam, he's a typical child actor. The kid who plays Fenton fucking sold it all on his face the entire time. Like when he's barely lifted his head up to look at his dad, and his voice is cracked, and he doesn't do it in a state like a theater kid's, because I teach high school, so I'm surrounded by theater kids. And if any of my former students find this, I'm sorry, you're a theater kid. I was not a theater kid by any stretch of the imagination, but he doesn't sell it like that. He's like, there is no God, like just this weary resignation of, but also this grit of fuck you.
The balls that would take, man. I would be like, first day, I'd be like, I had a vision. Can I come out?
I'd start having like, I'd
be down there for like 45 minutes.
Why has your father locked you in here, Fenton? I don't know, God.
All right. Well, it's funny. Okay, so I'm gonna bring up the one thing that kind of almost pulls me out of the movie because it's so fucking campy, is the montage scene where it's Fenton's face descending into darkness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of an old William Castle production. Like, it was so cheesy. And I love it because it's cheese, but it's almost, and it fits with some hammering of the puzzle pieces. It fits into the puzzle. But at the same time, like, first thing I saw that it reminds me of the opening of the original House on Haunted Hill, where, Vincent Price is like, come, we have drink and food and ghosts. It always reminds me of that. And I'm like, the fuck is that doing in this movie? I love you.
One of the weirder choices, man. So, did either of you, the first time you saw it, did either of you expect the twist? Like, I didn't expect Fenton to be Adam. Did either of you have that? Like, I thought it was really well told, and they really sold that he was the right person with the telling. But I didn't know if either of you felt differently.
I can't recall from the first time I saw it, like what my thoughts were on it. But even watching it again, I got sucked in where I'm like, I said earlier, I'm like, well, I know he's going to be, I know he's the killer. But then part of me was like, no, no, maybe it's not. So I tried to pull myself out of that thinking. And then I think they did such a great job, as you point out, James, they did such a great job of the storytelling and the pacing to where you're almost partially in the FBI agent's shoes or from his perspective, but then also from the perspective of an audience member where you're like, well, okay, well, he put handcuffs on him, so he doesn't trust him. So he's doing the right thing. It's not like, hey, get in the front seat of the car with me, kid. We're going to go drive off someplace to go find these bodies.
Yeah.
But I'm also questioning, like, which is always one of those things within any horror film. Why are you going by yourself? Like, even then, you call local law enforcement. Somebody else has to be that, you tip somebody off to what's going on. And so it was just driving me crazy where I'm like, you're in the house when the ghost is coming out and saying, I'm going to kill you. Get out of my house. And you're like, you know what? These drapes look nice. I could do something here.
For me, I don't recall when I first saw it, because now we're going back almost 20 years. But I remember when it would pop up, because I think I've seen it 4 times now, all told, which is not a lot for a movie I was advocating, let's do an episode on. But it left an impression on me. But I remember going back into this rewatch going, all right, I know the Matthew McConaughey is saying he's the one guy, but he's actually the other brother. Right. But I remember thinking before I pushed play on the DVD that it doesn't, I remember feeling kind of jangly and barely holding on. That was my initial impression. And then I was watching it this time and I was paying attention to see if it still felt that way. Because it might have been, that was my reaction when I saw it, or it might have been my examination of it over the next few days after I first saw it. And I thought they handled the twist really much better than I thought. Because I'm like I said, I remember thinking about it like, oh yeah, I know he's the killer, and I know he's going to say he's saying he's the brother, but he's really the other guy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and I remember feeling that it was kind of janky. Like it was kind of glued together, but that isn't actually what it is. It just, I don't know where that idea came from. Maybe from other movies that didn't pull off the twist nearly as well. So I was watching it this past week, rewatching it in anticipation of this episode, and I was going, oh no, this holds up. And it's kind of clever how they did it. Like they kind of tied up all the loose ends at the end, because they had because Bill Paxton, or the script, set up everything to kind of ruin the Matthew McConaughey character. You had the other agents there. You had him, the Powers Booth FBI agent calling the town where the dispatcher picks up. Oh, what's Fenton doing now? You had all these setups, and then they systematically tie each one up very nicely at the very end. So I'm going to drop this on you guys.
Okay.
If you look at the narrative structure of Frailty, and I say this as a fan of both movies, but given the main character of the one movie's problems and monstrousness, it might be bad. Frailty is essentially a horror movie version of The Usual Suspects.
Okay.
I love that.
Okay, so let's take it. Let me show my work. You have a movie opening. A killing, a crime has occurred, and we immediately cut to a police station. There is a person with knowledge of the crime in the office who is left alone to examine the room, including, in this case, a picture of the main agent and his mother. He then immediately tells a flashback that happened very recently to explain his presence there. In this case, the death of his brother, who he says is the God's hand killer. And then beyond that, he then tells the story through flashback, going all the way back to the beginning of said story that led to this moment, much like The Usual Suspects. Now, where the things diverge is that The Usual Suspects, until the very end, basically takes place in one room with the Joe Mantegna character. Because isn't the guy who played the FBI agent in The Usual Suspects like the voice of the mafia boss on The Simpsons? Can't remember. I always mix him up with another person.
That's him.
Okay. Fat Tony. He's in Kevin Spacey's in The Office with Fat Tony. The difference is Matthew McConaughey and discount Michael Ironsides go on drive. That's the only real difference, because even the reveal of the guy you're talking to is actually the mastermind behind all this is pretty much the same. And even the closing fucking shots of the movies, you have Fat Tony having lost, what was the mastermind's name in The Usual Suspects? Fuck. Kaiser Soze.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Pop culture zeitgeist for like 4 years. Kaiser Soze. You have him stuck not being able to catch Kaiser Soze, so close to catching him. And then the camera pans out showing the busy street. And then Frailty ends with Matthew McConaughey and his apparently his wife, his partner, the dispatcher, and they're just and then the camera pulls back, revealing the small town street. The comparison occurred to me very early on in the movie. And so it just became a game for me and be like, okay, how Usual Suspects is this movie? Because I love The Usual Suspects, but it's kind of problematic to like now because Kaiser Soze really was a monster.
What a twist.
I know, right? Who didn't see that one coming? But I was watching, I'm going, oh my God. I wonder if the screenwriter was unintentionally inspired by The Usual Suspects, because The Usual Suspects came out 96, 98, something like mid 90s. So it had been around, but it had been a really big movie. And then 5 years later, here comes Frailty with a very similar narrative structure.
I mean, I think they're so different that most people wouldn't even make that connection, but I kind of like it because I think that it really works for horror. And The Usual Suspects always has that little feeling of horror to me.
Yes.
And this just really takes it to that next level. Before we came on the air, you also mentioned identity. And I feel like that kind of fits into this as well. That whole, we're being presented something, but it's very much, we're missing a big piece that changes everything. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think it's cool how all of those kind of work together in this way.
Well, you mentioned there's a vaguely horror vibe in The Usual Suspects. And I actually agree with that, because I remember the first few times, and I haven't watched that movie in a long time because it's hard to get. I see Kaiser Soze, I'm going, ooh, or verbal kints. I don't even own a copy of American Beauty anymore because of that. I'm like, I used to love that movie too. It's just I can't watch it anymore. But I remember like you have Dean. I forget the guy's name, but he's Irish. But the red herring bad guy, and he's shot on the boat. Everyone's dead. He tries to. He's wounded. He's mortally wounded. He's dying. And for me, with that scene where you see the real bad guy coming to shoot him, like you see all the dead bodies. It's completely empty, and to me, that's always had a very creepy vibe to it. Like I'm mortally wounded on a ship of the dead. That's fucked up, So I get that. I get that entirely.
I love that.
But I'm gonna immediately say about the whole flashback structure of the movie. I love the flashback structure of the movie. I don't think it would work unless, if you told it in a linear fashion, like picking it up with when his dad had the fucking vision and just telling it to the present day, it wouldn't work as well. But at the same time, I was saying earlier how much the actor who played Fenton fucking sold all the things that were going on. At the same time, because it's narrative, there's so much narration, or because it's flashback, there's so much narration that at times, especially early on, Matthew McConaughey, who does a great job in it, is kind of walking all over this kid's acting. Like we can clearly see how he's reacting. And then you have Matthew McConaughey like a second later going, and I was feeling this. I'm like, no shit, we can see it. Do you have to remind us you're there? So.
Damn it, Matthew.
I know. But that's the only thing I really dislike about the structure of the movie, in spite of because I was watching, I'm going, this is really good. This is really good. Oh shit, you're talking again. Fuck.
Bad. I wonder how much of that, obviously that's the script doing that. And but I just wonder, if Cameron was there and making changes to some other stuff, that didn't occur to him.
Well, I think it might be kind of a subjective thing. I imagine there are people who didn't mind it at all and didn't even notice it at all. I was kind of, because I know I was going to be nitpicking the shit out of this on the show. I was literally looking for nitpicks. I feel like I was prepping for an episode of CinemaSins.
Yes. I'll gladly take that comparison. That'd be great.
It's a great nitpicky show, and I find it hilarious.
And if I can get their sponsorships and their Patreon and
but so I was looking at it and I was like I said, the Adam character, he did fine, but he's a standard child actor with pros and cons inherent therein. Like I said, the character, I think if you were going to give an MVP acting award to any of the cast, and like I said, I like Bill Paxton, I like Matthew McConaughey, but that kid who played Fenton, fucking hell, man. Because the movie kind of, especially as things start rolling, there's a pervasive feeling of helplessness throughout the entire story. And the kid, you can tell, was feeling it. Like he did his homework and he showed his work throughout that entire damn movie. So like I said, it was but I think that might be a subjective criticism of mine, because I know a lot of people don't mind narration. I mean, they make fun of it on CinemaSins, speaking of which, but I know most people don't mind it. But I was reminded while I was watching it, I pulled in the most random things. I was reminded of the Batman the Animated Series when they updated it to include Robin and Batgirl, and they changed his costume so it didn't have the yellow circle around it. I remember reading an article where they took all of Batman's lines in the scripts and cut him in half. He had much less vocal dialogue, so his presence was more of a thing. And I was like, if you had done that in this movie, it would have been brilliant. But I don't, 21 years later, let's have a screenwriter who made a movie for Bill Paxton listen to the rantings of an indie writer from Virginia.
Well,
Hollywood called me.
I didn't pay attention to this, so I have no way to know. And I'm not going back to watch it this second, but it would be more interesting if the things that he says afterwards sum up how Adam was feeling.
Okay.
Because you'd get Fenton on screen, But then, since he's really Adam, when he says, "Oh, I was feeling this," it would be really interesting to me if that's how Adam should have been feeling in that scene.
Fuck, I'm not going to watch that again tonight.
Again, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out as that would be awesome, not as that's what happened.
That would be awesome, and it merits another rewatch, which kind of annoys me because I was planning on watching the part 1 of the George Carlin documentary tonight. Or no, I was watching the because it's 4 hours. I'm planning on watching that George Carlin documentary tonight. So fuck you for making me now want to watch it a third time.
You are
in
welcome.
4 days.
And then let me know because I'm not going to.
I have a feeling if I have a few beers, I can resist. But yeah, because I remember reading Bill Paxton saying at one point, it's like, it's a movie that you can enjoy over multiple viewings because the first time you're just kind of soaking it in. I'm paraphrasing. But the second time, once you know the twist, you suddenly go in, and he says everything is laid out. So it makes sense. It's not a cheat, which is also very nice. I always hate those movies that kind of cheats. Like Usual Suspects goes very close to being a cheat. Like,
oh yeah,
he's sitting across the room. How the fuck is he reading the fine print on a bulletin board that's 10 feet away? I have 20/20 vision. I can't see that shit. He picked the name of the lawyer from the logo he sometimes saw for a millisecond on the bottom of a coffee mug. Fuck out of here.
He got that same eye surgery that Tiger Woods got.
Oh yeah. So
that's the one where you cheat on your wife and then she hits you in the face with a golf club.
Wow.
Yikes. Okay. All right, we're going there now. That was a subtle joke as a swing from Otis the Axe.
Oh, Otis. I love Otis, by the way. I love that they did it so that I assume, I don't know, but so that it's the same axe when McConaughey uses it at the end. Like it's the exact same because it's got the word on there, But I also like how it kind of almost personalized, almost makes it personifies. That's the word I'm looking for. Almost personifies the axe by giving it a name.
Yeah.
Like it's another helper from God instead of just a random axe that you found.
Like the pipe he carries. It's not like it's Larry the lead pipe, but it's, Otis the Axe.
Yeah. Somebody axe Otis. Oh
God.
But, oh yeah.
So, I also love that these are just laying around. Like, I think that's such a great touch to make you really question this. Like, this guy just finds a fucking pipe on the ground, and
yeah,
driving along and finds an axe at a farm. Like, that's not weird. Most farms have axes, like, I like how it just increases is he fucking crazy?
Yes.
Well, it struck me because the one thing I thought about, as odd as it would be, is the movie. Of course, I can't remember the name of the title, but the movie about Joan of Arc, where they go through this, or she's having this conversation with God, who's played by, oh gosh, I can't remember his name now. But anyway, she's having a conversation.
Don't ask me.
Yeah, she's having a conversation with God, and she's talking about, oh, God chose me, and this spirit, angel, God, whatever. Is like, what do you mean God chose you? It's like, well, I found a sword. And, it's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, obviously God left it there for me. And so he goes through all these scenarios as to why the sword would be. It's probably one of the funniest montages I was say one of the funniest montages that there is in a serious historical biopic, because he gives all these examples of why a sword would be in the middle of the field. He's like, oh, okay. Here is practical. And it shows like two people like fighting. One guy gets killed, drops his sword. The other guy walks off. Then it's, oh, there's a cart that's going through that's carrying weapons and a sword falls off in the field. And then there's, this guy who just decides, oh, fuck it. I don't need to carry this sword, and throws the sword into the field. Right. And he says, those are all the options that are out there. After all the different ways that you can explain this, your idea of how the sword ended up there was, and it just shows like angels sing. It has angels singing, and it shows a sword descending from the sky. It's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But so that's all I thought of with this scene was that moment in the Joan of Arc movie where he has this excuse of, oh yeah, I saw this beam of light breaking through the clouds, and I went to this farmhouse. I had an axe, and God left it there for me. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I love how one of the sons basically says, like, Dad, this doesn't make any sense. I don't believe any of this. Actually, no, Fenton, or quote unquote Fenton, says that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And I love that a child brings this up, because I don't want to attribute the wrong comedian. It might have been Daniel. In fact, it was Daniel Tosh, where he said that, when it comes to religion, and he wasn't like shitting on anybody's religion. He said, but you got to think about the marketing for religion. It's like, it's a whole lot easier if you're a kid, like you get a kid to believe this stuff in, it gets ingrained in you, and you accept that as part of your life. But if you go to an adult who has had no exposure to this, has seen the real world, has seen all these things that take place, and you immediately come to him and say, this happened because of magic, this happened because of a supernatural being, he's going to look at you like, okay, and then walk away from you, because he's not going to want to interact with you. And I love the way that Fenton kind of has that adult response, that adult secular response to this, where he's kind of like, that doesn't make sense. Like, even given this faith, these ideas that are out there, Dad, this doesn't make any sense. Why would God choose you? And second, why would we be the only ones that could see all this stuff that's taking place? And especially when he, after they, or at least he brings that woman home that he's attacked, or the demon that he's brought home and attacked in the shape of a woman, there's still that doubt that's raised in that kid, where it's like, this isn't right. Like, something is wrong. No,
I think that was a really good balance in Frailty. Like, when he voices that logical conclusion, this doesn't make any sense, Dad, the audience is fully in the pocket of Fenton. Like, we are now on Fenton's side, because it does look crazy. Right. And Bill Paxton balances it in the direction and the reveal of various things very well. What I found interesting is that they go to the length of showing us the importance of the axe and the gloves. Right. But then he comes home one day and he has a pipe. And I'm like, and that, in a way, I was kind of struck at the time when I watched it, going, why doesn't the pipe get its own little anecdote, for lack of a better term? And then I realized, if you're Fenton, you're going to go, or the audience, you're going to go, it's going to look how it is. It looks fucking crazy. Like, look at this. And he kneels down in front of the coffee table and he reveals this fucking pipe like it's a prop from the Clue movie. And
the way that it's wrapped up is so great too.
Oh yeah. Like, it's a sacred artifact. And they cut to Fenton's face, and again, that kid fucking sold it. He's looking at this like, I'm fucking surrounded by nutcases,
Mm-hmm.
And they're my dad and my brother. Speaking of little details that really sell it, I love it when he gets punished to dig the hole and he doesn't wear gloves, and they don't make a big deal of it. It's just how he's moving. Mm-hmm. But like, he goes over to the sink to run water over the blisters that have popped open. And it's one of those details that a lot of movies would probably just skip over. Like, oh yeah, he just dug it out. He wasn't wearing gloves. Well, that's a big deal. And they actually made a point to point it out. Like, no, this kid's like self-harming to spite his dad, And I thought that was a really cool detail. Yeah, it became bigger because he's like, wear gloves, and his father throws gloves at his head and shit like that. But they handled it in a way that, like, when he's initially digging, when Adam brings him out a glass of water and stuff like that, you don't even think about his hands. It's not until they draw attention to it, you go, oh shit, yeah. Because anyone who's ever dug a hole deeper than, say, 6 inches goes, yeah, your hands kind of hurt afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Right. Definitely.
And so I like that. Like those little attentions to details, what actually sells the movie. Is it the most unique story ever put to celluloid? No. Is it the narrative structure you've seen in other movies, but it's the coalescence of all these little elements that make it a movie that may not change your life, but it doesn't just zip right through you. It's one of those movies that rests very comfortably in those, it's a good movie type groupings. Like, you have to put in Frailty along with a movie like Identity or Stir of Echoes or things like that.
I love all of those. So
because they're great.
That makes me happy. Just spoiler now, Don. That's gonna be my double feature a little bit. All right. So I think the thing that I love most about this scene of digging the hole is just his absolute defiance. He won't even accept help from his brother. He's not taking the easy way out. He's going to do what he was told to do and fuck you, you know? Right. And that's so great. And I love when they're like, I'll bet you didn't pray once. And just the look on his face is just like, you're goddamn right. I love his, like it's so good.
Love his answer. He's like, nope. It was just very matter of fact, nope. Like,
God, it's so good.
Like I said, he gets the MVP acting. I don't know what that kid did afterwards, if he did anything, but he that dude fucking sold every minute of that movie.
When I was watching this, all I thought about were, and I haven't seen any of this stuff lately. It may be because we have more social media. There's more stuff for people to do and see. But it seemed like in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like we were just stuck in this loop of, oh, someone saw Jesus's face in a piece of toast, or in an underpass, or in a cloud. There's actually a place I think it's in Woodstock, Georgia. I might be wrong, but there's yearly these people would gather just to sit outside in an open field to look at the clouds, because, I think it was the Virgin Mary or Jesus would appear in the clouds like once a year. And they would just, honestly, from all over the world, people would just show up in Woodstock, Georgia at this one person's farm to get a view of Jesus or Mary or whoever in the cloud, or an angel or whoever in the clouds. And so it just made me think of, if you're already open to that, right, you're going to see it a lot more than somebody else. So if you're looking for this stuff as far as like, oh, I'm looking for a sign from God or from Jesus or from Mary or from whoever, like I'm gonna be able to get it as soon as possible. What really got me about this, though, was not just the guy not the fact that this guy's having visions, the dad is having visions, but it's that idea that you see from Fenton and Adam to an extent, but especially from Fenton's character, that you have this genuine fear that somebody you love is doing something bad and you don't know what to do about it. Right.
Yes.
You can't get any help because anybody that you're reaching out to for help can't help you. One, they're not going to believe you. And then two, in the case of the sheriff or the cop or whoever it was, like you take him home and he's like, oh, this is all bullshit, kid. And then as soon as when he's leaving, the dad just whacks him over the head and then makes you kill him.
Yeah.
It's just that I guess that compounding of trauma or just the way that the I don't even want to call it abuse, but the way in which you are compelled to participate in this, whether you want to or not. And we've seen stories like this in the news, on the internet, of kids or spouses that are stuck and have to abide by whatever the leader of the family or the cult or whatever says, because they understand that there's nothing else out there for them. There's no safety out there for them because of the world that's been created around them, to where they have to do this stuff. And eventually you do have people who break away from it or turn their families in or whatever it is. But you see how, at least from this vantage point, you see how somebody who's in that situation has to deal with that, and how that's a really deep struggle.
And that's one of the things that really attracts me to a story like Frailty, is that, like I said earlier, the pervasive sense of helplessness, because you feel loyalty, you feel responsibility. In fact, I think at one point the dad said, if you tell anyone, someone innocent's going to die.
Right.
And look what happens. And that helplessness of, again, we're basically, Fenton is our gateway character into the story, or at least in the flashback version. That it really kind of draws you in, because you can, even if you've never been in a situation even close to that, you can empathize with that sense of loyalty and dedication and responsibility, and when you're put in a situation like that, the sense of helplessness, that those feelings, they're supposed to make you feel warm and comfortable and a part of something, can be binding, can be restricting. Right. I kept waiting. And I think the real tension in the movie is just waiting because we've been trained by Hollywood and trained by, PSAs in the 80s and 90s. If you see something, say something. And you're just waiting for him to do it. In spite of the warning his dad gave him, you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And when he finally does break, you're like, there's that sense of relief. But as soon as they go back to the house, you go, oh, fuck. Oh, no. Mm-hmm. This is not going to go well.
Yep.
So I can definitely, I can definitely co-sign on that.
All right. So have any of you been in a cult situation like this before?
I mean, I was raised Catholic.
That's what I was going to say.
Close enough.
That's why I really love the movie Dogma.
Dogma is one of my favorite movies ever as well.
That makes three of us.
It is good. And I the fact that I still I have it on DVD and I'm like, I protect it with my life because it's not available for sale anywhere else or on streaming. I'm like,
the church from Dogma is in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And so I'm going there during StokerCon next year. It's like it's a mecca for me. I have to go. And the best part is it's abandoned now. So it's not even, like I won't run into a real church crowd while I'm there. It'll be great. I'm praying that Alanis Morissette comes out and boops my nose, but I think the odds are long on that. So
random tangential story to that. When my wife was pregnant, we went to go see Kevin Smith speak in Pittsburgh, and he was doing a podcast tour and stuff like that. And because he was in Pittsburgh, he's relating stories from Dogma. And he remembers walking with Alanis one night through downtown, and he named the street, and I could picture because I've been on that street a billion times. Watching Dogma a lot of time for me is kind of going, I know that place, I know that place, I know that place, I know, but at the time he was talking with Jay, kind of talking with the audience, and off to the side they had a ASL signer for people who are hard of hearing or deaf, and he made a reference to abortion. And the signer did the movement, which kind of looks like, because we're not video, so it's hard out to describe it. It's kind of like if you sit in the power stance, like your legs kind of spread like man spreading, and you drive your hands down in a kind of opening gesture. That's apparently what the signer used for abortion. And it immediately stopped the show because Kevin Smith went, what did you just do? And the signer was like, I did the sign for abortion. He's like, can you do it again? And she does it again. And the audience is like, holy shit, that's the most insane sign. And I don't know if it's accurate. I might be there might have been more to it because I don't know ASL.
I made the mistake of just Googling it. And it looks like rocking a baby and then throwing out a piece of shred.
Yes.
Oh my God.
It's pretty rough. It's like I said, stop the show. And Kevin Smith was like, I forget why he was talking about with Alanis Morissette, but he was walking through Pittsburgh and that story came up. I forgot StokerCon's in my hometown next year. I've never been to a StokerCon, never been to a Hard Writers Convention.
Just sign up now because you're now in charge. You're now in charge of taking me to the places that are sacred to me because I've never been to Pittsburgh, and Dogma is, for lack of a better term, Dogma is God to me. So there you go.
Maybe. It's so hard to it's so hard to plan. Like, I love the fact they already opened up the tickets for next year. That's awesome. But I've always been one of those people that's like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in a fucking year. I barely know. I'm a father. I barely know what I'm doing a month from now. So I'm a high school teacher. You ask me what I'm doing in December, I can tell you what the lesson plan is. That's about it.
Really fast, while we're on the subject of the sign language interpreters, I went to a Dane Cook show in 2008, and he was talking about cock blocking and how there should be a woman version of it, and it was twat swatting. And the sign language person was directly in front of me. So as soon as he said it, I just stared directly at her. And now it's one of the few things that I know how to sign. And it has not come in very.
No, but you feel like a better person for knowing it, don't you?
I do. Yes.
See, if I was thinking the opposite of clock block, I'd be like clam jam. That's what immediately pops in my head.
It's making me think of all those movies in the 60s and 70s. We're having a clam jam at the beach. I can't watch those movies anymore. In the school I teach at, because you have to worry about peanut allergies, stuff like that. They have signs that get passed around, especially if a student who has those allergies, and it just says "nut-free classroom." And I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, I should fucking hope so.
Oh my God.
And all my colleagues looked at me and then they got what I was referencing and they scowled at me. And I was like, I mean, what the fuck are we doing here, people? Of course. And they didn't like the fact that I was committed to the bit. So we got kind of far from Frailty.
No, I don't think
I said all my notes, honestly.
We're talking about nuts.
All right, Don, what else do you got?
That makes sense for us to bring that up.
From a writing standpoint, I absolutely love when Fenton takes the axe to his father.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's so well done. It's so set up. And there's a part of you that's like, which way is he going to go?
Yeah.
Like even now, like after I've seen it a bunch of times, there's still that piece of me that always thinks he's going to do it. And then when it hits, I'm like, oh shit, yes. And I'm always surprised by it. And I don't know why I can't remember that it's there, but holy shit, I love that moment.
Because the tension is right with that scene. Yeah. Where sometimes it's like, oh, it's obviously going to happen right now. With that, but it's like you still are sitting there. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by it, but it's an effective payoff of the tension. Very effective payoff.
Well, and then the good part is how he pulls Adam in. Paxton pulls him in, and like whispers to him.
Yeah.
And that look, man, so good.
And they both look at Fenton and it's like, that was the moment where I feel like they fully committed to the idea of, I think they believe they've convinced the audience that the speaker, Matthew McConaughey's character, is Fenton, because Fenton wouldn't know what Adam said. But so I thought that was close. Like, the one thing I love about a movie like this is like it, and I think I said this before, is it sets up its twist very well. Are the clues all there like Bill Paxton says there are? I don't know. I have to go back and watch, because you son of a bitch, you said maybe he's narrating Adam's reaction. And I'm like,
that's the only thing I can think of that would make it fair. But as it is, I do 100% believe that this is not fair, because there's no way to think that's going to be the twist, that he's really Adam. I don't feel like there's enough there to give it to you. So it's not fair. But you know what? I don't give a fuck, because I love it so much.
See, I don't disagree. I'm kind of on the fence on that, because if I think about it, every scene that Fenton is in, either Adam is fully beside him or coming in or going from him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he's ever narrating. The only time you can really say he is when he's stuck in the cellar by himself, when he's like, I saw God. But that's an easy paper over of just saying, well, he and Adam talked about it. That's an easy paper over. I can't argue if you say it's cheated. I don't feel like it's not a cheat. I honestly don't think it's a cheat. I think it's effectively paid off. I think it's effectively set up, but I can see why people would be like, error. And that might be why when I first saw it and I was rewatching, I was like, the twist felt a little janky to me, and I was waiting to see if it still held up. Because I remember, like I said, I remember saying it at the top. I remember thinking when I first saw it, I was like, okay, I got where you're going. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't know if this is paid off. Let's see. Let's see if he can pull it off.
I wonder if the vision from God is so weird because Adam didn't experience it. So it's like, what is Adam in this? Like 7 or 8 or something?
Yeah.
So it would be like an 8-year-old's version of what his brother would have seen locked in the cellar. And maybe that's why it's so strange.
Maybe. I mean, every time if he's relaying, because I can definitely see like when he saw the vision of God, that it seriously came, I think, from a bowling trophy. If I recall correctly, it was one of the trophies, and immediately my mind says bowling trophy. I don't know if that's accurate. But everything he sees that's the only thing that really feels artificial. Like, I love the fact that this isn't a gory movie by any stretch of the imagination. You have an axe embedded in Bill Paxton at the very end, but it's at the very end. They always cut away just before the strike. And so the only other, like, this movie could almost entirely play on cable television without a single cut, except maybe for the axe. But the special effects around the god are so, I don't even want to say they're 2001 good, because 13 Ghosts came out around the same time, and that at least looks impressive in its bonkersness. But it looks like something that it was made on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I wonder if that's because it's told from the perspective of a kid who never experienced it himself.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just one of those things I've been thinking about since, of why it feels so weird with the choices they made for filming the rest, you know?
How so?
Just the like I was talking about, how the rest of the movie has that very old school feel to it. And the vision parts do too, but they don't work well with everything else to me. Like you said, the floating head is weird, and like even the angel coming down, it looks good for the time, but like, I don't know, it's still very odd to me. So the whole thing just, it's the one part that really pulls me out, when it should be the part that you care the most about, you know?
I mean, I get that, and I can definitely see, like I said, I don't even think the special effects are good for the time. I thought they were, like I said, they look like Sci-Fi Channel movie-esque. Except the only part of those special effects I thought were actually really clever is when Bill Paxton's character is underneath the car, before the angel appears, when the undercarriage of the car kind of retreats and moves kind of more. I thought that was actually pretty legit. I was like,
that looked good.
That was good.
Well, here's what took me out of that scene, because I don't know. I've gotten real picky about some things, and it wasn't the special effects. It was the fact that you had all these bits of embers around him. You're not going to put on some eye protection, dude?
Yes. I remember sitting there, and I wonder if that was like to show that he's fully checked out of the world. But I was watching it, and the camera would cut to him, and I'd be like, dude, that has to sting.
Yeah.
The fuck you doing? I thought the same thing. Oh my God. I didn't take a note of it, but it's funny you mentioned that.
Well, here was something that pulled me in, and then really made me think a little bit deeper about this movie. Was the idea that you're taught throughout the majority of the movie that, the visions are probably, or at least you're getting the impression that the visions are bullshit, or, at least one of the sons believes it's real. One son doesn't believe it's real. And this man is judging everyone based off of the gift that God gave him. Right. And you don't realize it's true, or at least seemingly true, until Adam, Matthew McConaughey, now we've realized that he's not Fenton, does the same thing to the FBI agent. And you see that the FBI agent actually killed his mom, which a lot of audiences, or at least a good number of the audience, myself included, probably thought like, oh shit, his mom was actually killed by, the dad, or possibly killed by Adam. And you're dragged along kind of thinking that, and you realize once he, touches his hands, because there is no interaction. Because even if you go back, you start realizing, you're like, holy shit, they never touch each other. Because even when he gives him the handcuffs, he throws the handcuffs at Matthew McConaughey. It's like, hey, here, cuff yourself. And there's never a moment where they actually lay hands on each other until the end, when the reveal happens. And that FBI agent, it's demonstrated like, oh, you killed your own mom. Like, what the fuck, dude?
That was out of no. I mean, I remember it happening, but I remember thinking, that's fucked up. What the fuck?
I would like to know
context
why.
on that.
Yeah,
exactly.
The thing that kind of, and I always thought it was a weird bit. I mean, it was told something a kid would do, and I totally saw it as something a kid would do, but it would almost be better if they had just cut it when young Adam comes up with his own list, and it's basically just kids around him. Like,
yes.
If you actually bought into this shit, you wouldn't have done that. I mean, I get you can, because as someone who has not been visited by visions of God, I can see why a kid would do that who doesn't believe. But all throughout this movie, Adam's the true believer. Like, that's the one consistent thing throughout this entire movie. But he comes up with a random list of people I want to kill. Like, the fuck?
Yeah, that's weird. It's funny, but it's very out of place.
It is very out of place. That was one of the things I was like, okay, that scene probably could have been left on the cutting room floor, that exchange. But yeah, Powers Booth revealing that it being revealed that he killed his mom with no motive or context other than, I mean, he keeps the fucking picture of her on his desk. So he fucking
hates the way she hangs up laundry.
Maybe
he was so sick of the laundry nonsense that it had to go. So,
since we're nitpicking things, the one thing that, and I remember watching it last night going, is, and maybe it's because the other victims were bound in some way so they couldn't move, but Matthew McConaughey touches him and gets the vision and stuff like that. And he's suddenly like walking around drunk, powerless. I'm going, wait, is that what it does to the demon, quote unquote? Because I don't remember seeing that in the other killings, but they were also bound. So maybe that's the papering over. But I always thought that was so interesting. I'm like, wait a minute. You touch someone and suddenly they're disoriented?
I mean, that doesn't happen to the really crazy motherfucker.
No.
Yeah, that one dude that is like a legit threat. It doesn't happen to him. Yeah. So
yeah, and I was like, I thought that was so, and I was like, is this just a plot convenience so it can explain how Matthew McConaughey A, got the gun off him, and B, got him into the grave? Because the only thing that makes sense. I feel like I'm beating up on something. I'm like, I love you as I hit you. I feel like we're treating Frailty like a domestic violence victim. But it is. I remember watching that. I'm like, okay, I love this movie, but that doesn't play. That doesn't land well with me. And it did smell a little ripe with, I needed a quick plot convenience of explain how a handcuffed Matthew McConaughey is going to overpower an armed FBI agent.
And I think that's exactly what it is. But I think that's one of those things that as a writer, you have to go, okay, so that's the rule now. So I got to go back and do it to the others. And it would have been really simple to do to the others.
Yeah.
And it bothers me that they didn't. And yeah.
Plot conveniences are fine. Then the game for me as a writer is to see how well you can build it into the plot so it doesn't feel like a plot convenience. You may be anyone who's vaguely critical at all can see that's plot convenience. Okay, cool, great, it happens. We see it all the time in stories. But now I want to see you explain it and make it work. And they just didn't. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. Not even like, because the real easy one, and you don't even have to build it in, is all the other ones are, because I think Bill Paxton's wearing the gloves with the actual thread, the one guy. I'd have to go back and check. The other ones are bound. So you can make the argument that, well, they didn't react that way because they can't move. Powers Booth could move.
Okay, yeah.
So, but the fact they just kind of never address it, like they're just like, oh, this is how it is. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm a guy who can accept all plot convenience in a story because as long as the story's good, I'll accept a lot. In a story if it's good, if the conceit is good. But that just kind of, no, we're not even going to try. Oh well, we're near the end. It's like 5 minutes left. Fuck you.
Speaking of plot conveniences, there's the how did he get away with it and no one saw him? And this is a great plot convenience because it actually fits into everything and makes sense. And right. And that's that they can't see him on video. You can't see him in daylight. You can't remember him. And I thought the way that they went to piece with this makes this.
Yes.
You know, you have the early when they're in the grocery store parking lot. I think it's a grocery store. And he's like, but it's broad daylight, Dad. And Dad's like, God will protect us. No one will see us. It'll be fine. And then you get the security cameras at the end, and it perfectly gets rid of McConaughey's face. And you get the guy who looked directly at him, who comes and talks to him and can't remember him.
In broad daylight.
In broad daylight, yes. But that's what's so beautiful about it, is it's exactly what you were just talking about. It's about taking this plot convenience that would have made us all roll our eyes if they didn't drill it in as a rule throughout. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't feel forced. It feels like this great payoff where you're like, fuck yeah, that's awesome.
It feels like it's part of the mythology, and it feels authentic. And it's not, they drilled down on it, but they didn't draw your attention to it. It was just like, because you could excuse it away, especially when we're in, as Fenton is our guide through this view, is just more of Daddy's ravings. Right. And then to see it pay off, it's like, oh, so it is a payoff, but it's a payoff of just being like, this is how it is. Okay. Which is the weirdest payoff ever. It's like, okay, this is basic mythology. You're celebrating basic, consistent mythology. Right on. But you do at the same time. Because they even cut to the age when he's talking in the police station with Adam, and they do that Hitchcockian, like the background recedes, and it's like, oh, we're gonna see something, and nothing happens because he doesn't recognize him. And I was like, I like that. They set it up as if he's gonna be like, it was you, and it wasn't. And I was like, all right, good for you.
And then I absolutely love the handshake and the "you're a good man."
Oh, yeah.
That's so beautiful, because I liked that it shows that you can see the good in people as well. It's not just a demon detector.
Yeah. And I love the fact that the guy is so unnerved by it. Like, all right, weirdo. As you get the sense, and like I said, the acting in this is really well done. And he's just a minor character, but you get the sense that he feels like he's missing something. And you can literally see him telling himself, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. But it's like he almost has this perpetual tip of his tongue expression on his face. And I like that. I thought that was really understated, but really well done. The acting, like the cast of this is amazing.
Absolutely. All right. Do either of you have anything to add before we move forward?
You know what? I'm going to ask this question because I got to ask this question.
Sure. I would be a demon, and they would see. Oh wait, what? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, would this be something that was seen as a gift or a curse? I mean, from your own perspective.
Oh,
from my own perspective, it would be an absolute curse, because I don't like what I can already see of other people. I don't need to see more.
Okay.
It would be a curse because I'd have to touch people.
Beautiful. What about you, Don?
Oh my God. I think I'm going to side with you, James, because I've seen enough stuff to where, but I also think like I would get really fucked up where there's somebody I think is good. And then you realize, kind of like the guy who, I guess he was the child molester murderer. I don't know if I would start planning things out the way that the dad does with the kids. Like I would immediately see something like that, and I probably have a problem with him right there on the street. But then again, I mean, you could see this as a possibility where, there was this period, and it's probably still going on, but there was this period where people were obsessed with psychics. Imagine being able to use something like that to actually, I don't know, get a confession out of somebody. Just happen to be you. Not that I advocate working with the police, but if it becomes a thing of like there are missing kids or something, and the family's like, oh, this is Barry. He was here. I'm like, hey, Barry, and then shake his hand. I'm like, oh, he's got your kid locked up in his basement, and that's all you need. Now, after the family's done beating the shit out of him, they'll go find the kid in the basement.
Actually, it's funny you just saying that. I was like, oh, it's kind of like in the Dead Zone.
Yeah.
And I mean, King, I think I remember King raved about this movie. I think he would also see this as a curse too.
Because you can imagine how many people would want not that you would be against giving help to somebody, but how many people would show up trying to take advantage of your gift or use your gift for whatever it is that's going on. Could you imagine like, oh my God, I would just show up at political debates.
Oh man.
Oh,
okay, can I change my answer?
Oh man. Like
this might be the gift that gives a lot.
This is world-renowned demon hunter. And I'm like, I don't believe anything that this man says. And I shake his hand like, okay. You know, if you want me to keep this quiet, you might have to throw a couple of dollars at me, sir.
I mean, if there's one person I don't want to touch.
It's like the scene in the boardroom of Dogma.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where he leans into the chairman's and he whispers, and then Matt Damon in the background is like, hey, your own son, you sick fuck.
Yes.
I love that line.
Those two together are awesome. Just because I love that. I'm gonna have to watch that now too. Fuck. I just want to read comics tonight. God damn it. I want comic book shopping.
All right. So let's move into movie recs. So if people liked this movie, what else should they watch? Whoever wants to go first.
Definitely Identity.
Okay.
Yes.
Definitely Stir of Echoes. Actually, Stir of Echoes definitely, because it definitely fits in that. And fuck, since I've already referenced it, if you can go around the idea of seeing Kevin Spacey again, The Usual Suspects.
I love it. My double feature was definitely going to be Identity, because I think that these two flow pretty well together. Having talked about Stir of Echoes, I just want to say it's always going to be one of my favorite movies, and people should just watch it anytime they get a chance and just skip that other thing that M. Night made, because it's not as good.
Yes.
All right.
No sign.
Here you go with 500 million movies, because I could not stop writing them.
It's been so long since we did this. I missed my opportunity to make up a number. All right, go ahead.
I made it up for you. All right. So I was talking to God, and he gave me a vision. So I made a list of all these movies.
Of 7 movies?
Does that mean you have to go kill them all?
Yeah, right.
Pretty much. I have to kill them off the list. So Malice, strangely enough, I mean, this is the only non-horror. Well, I guess it depends on your perspective. Holes, Hatchet, Misery, Zodiac, Disturbia. I mentioned Fallen when we were talking. The Cell came to mind as well. It Follows, The Devil All the Time, Hereditary, Jacob's Ladder. I know James loves that one. Secret Window, What Lies Beneath, number 23, Breakdown with Kurt Russell, 8mm, and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I was trying to read my notes. So those are all the ones that I have.
All right. Nice. So Don just put us all to shame.
No.
That's what he does every time. That's why I only do the double feature with one film usually.
You realize you guys realize I had no friends growing up. I just watched movies and TV and played video games. Very sad life. Very sad. Just me and my demon hunting dad and my younger brother.
Alone in a small town in Texas. What's funny is that the town Thurman, that's the name of my cat.
Nice.
Because I named him and it wasn't because of Thurman the movie. There's another famous Thurman in a famous movie. He was the kid in Bad Santa.
Ah, okay.
So when I hear the name Thurman, I start howling because I saw Bad Santa before I saw Frailty. And I'm like, you want me to fix you some sandwiches? Such a good movie that's wrong. So we named our cat Thurman. And it's always a girl cat we named Thurman, because we've had 2 Thurmans now.
Oh, interesting. Huh. I would not have considered that name at all. You did it twice, so now I don't have to.
Well, because the first one we did by accident, just because we were we had rescued this stray litter, but they were too young to go to a shelter. So we were fostering them until they were old enough to go to the shelter. We kept the run, but we were coming up with the most, my wife and I, before we had kids. So one we Thurman, that was the one we kept her. The other one we called Connie. She was a calico, and Connie was short for cunnilingus. Turkey butt, tortoise, hippo. I'm trying to remember all of them. So we had Thurman, but she passed away when she was 3. And then I was helping out with a charity, and I came across another stray, and I was like, okay, I can't meet with my charity to get that into a shelter. I'll hold it overnight. And I knew I shouldn't have brought it home, because my wife and daughter immediately looked at it and said, oh, look at the kitty. It looks like Thurman. I was like, fuck. And that was 3 years ago. So yeah, because the new Thurman looks identical to the old Thurman, just 5 years apart.
He's a time traveler, that's all.
And personality wise, like they looked identical and they had the same personality. And it's like, oh God, like did you get reincarnated? It takes 6 years to get reincarnated.
Your cat was sitting there smoking a cigarette. It's like, yeah, you thought you could get rid of me, didn't you, you bastard?
Pretty much. So let's add Bad Santa to the list of Rex just because of Thurman.
Hell yeah. People should just watch that anyway.
It is really good.
Plus, it's kind of fun that you're suggesting a Christmas film when, you did one on our show.
Exactly.
So, all right, man, let's bring it back to you. Where can people find you online or order your books or whatever else?
You can order my books through Amazon, the evil Amazon, or probably IndieBound. You can probably find my books through IndieBound. My website, which I periodically update, not very often, but periodically, is thenothingspace.net. Or you can find me on Twitter at P_M_Anderson.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming back yet again. And I look forward to Alien 3 and Stir of Echoes and all the other movies we're going to force you to do in the future. So,
hell yeah. We're going to do it all.
All right.
Like 2 episodes of StokerCon.
I will hold you to that. I guess we're doing Dogma now too. All right. So that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am not Fenton or Adam.
And we'll see you back here next week at thenecronoma.com.